Hello everyone, this is Saurabh Sharma and I welcome you all to Vijayta IAS Academy. In this series of our current affairs, let's talk about the current affairs and important topics of 17th of January 2022. Friends, since we are right at the doorstep of India's budget layout in the parliament, in the budget session in the month of February, in this entire atmosphere of budget making speculations, we have to channelize, plan, execute, and forecast, and accordingly, the funds will be allocated that where what all components of economy, be it manufacturing, services, production, logistics, social sectors, space programs, and whatsoever, how the vision of the country development needs to be aligned with these sectors and what should be the contribution of these sectors. We have to now plan the budget, and when the budget is being planned, so different new schemes, new incentives based attractions, new tax rebates, new tax concessions, new opportunities of earning tax generating income and revenue for the exchequer, well, that will all be the part of context and domain, and that will all be the discussion part. Here we have in this series one very good important topic, which is chips to startup program and design linked incentive scheme. Chips, these chips are basically, we know in the form of science as semiconductors. This is important because recently government of India has allocated 70,000 crore rupees, that is $10 billion, to this industry, where we want at least 15 big level or large industries that will be making the special hub or the dedicated hub of chip manufacturing in the country, because at the moment Taiwan is the leading producer of chips, then America is also doing good, then Korea, Japan, Singapore, all these countries have considerably good share of chip productions. But especially in the reign of COVID-19, this chips demand and supply has become disturbed. So let's just take a look that why this issue is being discussed in this video and how this topic is making an important aspect of our today's discussion. So this chip issue is that 2020 and 2022 global chip shortage, this is the main bracket we have to talk about. It is an ongoing crisis in which the demand for integrated circuits, commonly known as semiconductor chips, is greater than the supply. That means that supply is increased or spiked, but the demand is stagnant or even going down. So which has already affected 169 industries that are based on the chip supplies. Sectors majorly are automobile, IT sector, healthcare sector, environmental aspect sectors, and personal care sectors as well. And it has led to major price increases, shortages of supply, and queues amongst customers for automobiles, graphic cards, video game consoles, computers, home appliances, and X-ray machines, let's say, or ICU care units, and all that stuffs are facing the shortage of these supplies because they are mostly based on semiconductors or ICs, that is integrated circuits. Commonly cited cause of the shortage includes the COVID-19 pandemic, China-United States trade war, and severe weather conditions. So if we talk about the reasons of shortage, we have number one is COVID-19 demand surge. Second, we have China-US trade war, because the two countries are at conflict now. And third is weather related conditions that has actually led to the shortage of chips, manufacturing, supplying, logistics, and whatsoever. Now, if we talk about the causes, mainly the cause of the global chip crisis is a combination of different events, with the rolling effect or snowball effect of the COVID-19 pandemic being the primary reason, absolutely primary reason, because COVID-19 pandemic has forced the entire world on an average for 3 months to lock behind the doors, staying indoors because of the spread of this COVID-19 virus. And when people who were working outside in the hubs, cyber hubs, cities, and in the headquarters, in the offices, or in the labs, they were forced to remain at home, and forcefully they were asked to shift on online mode of functioning, where the home equipment's demand actually rose. In this manner, when people are working from home, they need laptops, they need speakers, they need webcams, they need USB drives, they need mics, they need modems, they need internet connections, they need wire, and whatsoever. The demands of chips being used in these areas or products have been high, and therefore this sudden rise in the demand has actually disturbed the well planned and roughly about 10 to 20% reserve laden forecast of chip productions with the chip manufacturing companies. That is why the supply and demand equation is disturbed, and we are facing this chip shortage, which is unnecessarily now giving a rolling effect over the increase of prices and shortage and delay of product services to the end customers. So if we talk about COVID-19, an increase in remote work or household work and remote learning caused a surge in demand for computers, network peripherals, and other consumer electronics with chips. Due to lockdowns, chip production facilities were shut because workers were not allowed to work, leading to the depletion of inventories, which was already ready on shelf. In the fourth quarter of 2020, traditional computer sales saw a 26.1% growth over the previous year. So how much is the growth the computer industry has seen generally? In the fourth quarter of 2020 alone, it is almost 26% growth in demand of computer products alone, for PC supplies alone. Now, another is United States and China trade war. United States and China trade war. What is it? In September 2020, as part of the economic conflict between China and United States, the US Department of Commerce imposed restrictions on China's largest chip manufacturer, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, that is SMIC. Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation. US sanction over SMIC. So after getting this sanction, which made it harder for them to sell to companies with American ties, these restrictions forced companies to use another manufacturing plants like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company Limited, that is TSMC, and Samsung. However, these companies were already producing to maximum capacity, so that means they got overburdened. So in lieu of SMIC, US companies started giving these contracts to Taiwan Manufacturing Industrial Corporations plus Samsung, which were already burdened. So the supplies on time became a questionable affair. Now, severe weather conditions. A severe winter storm in February 2021 forced the closure of two plants in Austin and Texas owned by Samsung and NXP Semiconductors. Severe weather conditions in Texas and Austin forced the manufacturing of NIX company and Samsung to shut down. So again, the bitterness met sourness. So the situation will be dark. This set the supplies back from these two plants for several months. Taiwan is the leader in the global semiconductor industry, always remember, with TSMC alone accounting for more than 50% of global wafer foundry market in 2020. In 2021, Taiwan experienced its worst drought in more than a half century. Worst drought in Taiwan. Now, drought, you must be amazed that what drought has to do with this chip making industry. Drought, that means sukha, that means water scarcity in Taiwan. Why? Because water is important, required in the manufacturing system of this semiconductors. What is there? That the problems among chip manufacturers that use large amounts of ultra pure water to clean their factories and wafers. For example, TSMC facility used more than 63,000 tons of water a day, more than 10% of the supply of 2 local reservoirs. So why do we need water? Water is needed for the super ultra clean water, for cleaning purposes, cleaning premises, because dust can destroy integrated chips. As we know, we have to keep our systems away from dust, so this is the reason that it can actually destroy the coding and the circuit system of this integrated chips or semiconductors. And the amount of water what they are using is 63,000 tons a day. So you can imagine that this voluminous demand became a matter of concern, because already there was drought in the country. So these are the basic issues that led to that. Now another incident, there was a disaster, fire at facilities, that is an Asahi Kasei semiconductor plant which specializes in ADC and DAC components, caught fire in October 2020. This ADC is analog to digital converter, and this DAC is the digital to analog converter components, analog to digital converters and digital to analog converters. This plant which is making this ADC and DAC got fire, where an Asahi Kasei Corporation, which is a multinational Japanese chemical company, another Japanese factory owned by Renesas Electronics, which supplied 30% of the global market for microcontroller units used in car, caught fire. Renesas Electronics, that is supplying the global market for microcontrollers, that also got fired, and Renesas said it would take at least 100 days for them to get back to normal production. In January 2022, a fire from the Berlin plant of ASML affected the production of EUV lithography equipment used in chip production. So another important reason is fire in Japanese production centers that produce more than 30% microcontrollers for automobile industry. That is why Siam is basically got worried that the car prices might go up. But again, this is not an ethical strategy of business, that your profit remains same whatever the situation is. So the corporate houses sometimes can actually adjust and justify with the shortage in profit sometimes, because keeping the strategy of earning profit at any cost, it is not good, because ultimately the scope of the company's growth, because the end user who can afford your products will be diminishing, and that base will started getting shrink, because like the product, the customer will start shifting their loyalty, they will start switching over to the different products, technologies, or different manufacturers. So this is not a good practice for the moment to talk about. Now if these are the reasons, then what are the areas which got affected? Number one is the car industry. The average modern car can have between 1400 and 1500 chips, some even up to 3000. Cars account for 15% of global chip production, while personal electronics account for around 50% of the consumption. Chip revenues are even more skewed towards non-automotive sectors. The chip shortage is expected to cost the global industry US dollar 210 billion in revenue in 2021, which is huge. In this manner, we can see that those companies who cannot afford their existence will lose their presence, right? And then what happens? What is the effect they started getting up? Ford parked thousands of unfinished vehicles at Kentucky Speedway as the company waited for chips to finish assembling those cars. Toyota planned to cut vehicle production worldwide by 40%. General Motors announced it would halt production of almost all cars at its North American plants for a week or two that same month. During the third quarter of 2021, there were only 2/3 as many new car sales in the United States as there had been during the same period in the last year. So this is because of supply and demand issue that all the major companies of car manufacturing in the world, either they had to halt the production, they had to shut the production, they had to finish, sometimes close the plant. Next, graphic cards and gaming PCs, that industry is also affected. The global chip shortage made it difficult to acquire new graphic cards, while an increase in cryptocurrency mining in 2021 increased the demand even more. Finding gaming PC components became more difficult and more expensive, and as gaming PCs rely on either AMD or Nvidia to make their discrete GPU cards, both of these companies refreshed their lineup during the pandemic with popular new models that are very difficult to find or priced 50 to 300% above MSRP. And then again, video game consoles also, that this shortage of Xbox Series X and Series S, that also disturbed, while Sony warned in May 2021 that short supply of the PlayStation 5 console would continue in 2022 as well. You understand that eBay, Nintendo, Switch consoles, and like all these big companies who are producing massive amount of employment, massive volume of employment, and majority of people are directly or indirectly dependent on these sectors, because it is a sector complex where so many components are working together in the business, in the integration, in the supplies of even a nut bolt, let's say. And if the entire plant is shut down, then you can see what kind of cascading effect will be there on the supply chain, on the employment series, and whatsoever. Now in this context, where the shortage of semiconductors and this ICs is massive, within this case, India also, under this vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, want that this production system must be established within the sovereignty of the country, and India should not be dependent on the supplies from outside in a large volume. We should also have some supply base so that the supply can also be ensured on time, and this will in a way control the prices in the domestic market. So within this context, we have this topic, because yes, the context is big, topic is not that big. So here it's because it's just a scheme we have to look about, but for that you had to understand the context. So within this context, if we talk about India has allocated, or Indian government allocated 70,000 crore rupees, that is $10 billion in the month of December for the chip making industry. In order to transform India into the next semiconductor hub, the Ministry of Electronics and Information, that is MeitY, has sought applications from 100 academia, R&D organizations, startups, and MSMEs under its Chip to Startup program. Chips to Startup program. The chips means IC and semiconductors. Chips to Startup program aims to train 85,000 number of high quality and qualified engineers in the area of very large scale integration and embedded system design, as well as result in development of 175 application specific integrated circuits, working prototypes of 20 system on chips, and whatsoever over a period of 5 years. And the global industry has already announced that by 2022 this shortage remains in the place itself, seeing that another wave of corona, another set of these atmospheric disturbances, another sets of fires, whatever the expectation is, the global industry has forecasted that till 2022 end, this problem remains same. So therefore, within this context, India is forecasting for another 5 years, and this chip to startup program is vision up and lining up for the 5 years program. What we have to do, the chip to startup program addresses each entity of the value chain in electronics. Someone is, for example, someone is supplying the plate, someone is supplying the wires, someone is supplying the smaller components like resistors, bolts, nuts, whatsoever, etc. So CDAC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, a scientific society, it is a society operating under MIT, will serve as the nodal agency. So C2S has nodal agency as CDAC. This is important for prelims. Design linked incentive, with an overall vision to create a vibrant ecosystem for semiconductor chip design in the country, the MIT is also seeking applications from 100 domestic companies, startups and MSMEs under design linked incentive schemes, because the designing is absolutely important as per the global standards and the category of products being manufactured around the world. The scheme, which was a part of 76,000 crore 10 billion package that the government announced in December, aims to nurture at least 20 domestic companies involved in semiconductor design and facilitating them to achieve turnover of more than 1,500 crore in the next 5 years. CDAC, a scientific society operating under MIT, also serves as the nodal agency for implementation of the design linked incentive scheme. So this is important for prelims. So in this context, India will not only able to reap the opportunities created by the COVID-19, opportunities created by the shortage in the supply system, shortage in the employment system, and shortage in the skills availability within this field. So in this context, this massive amount of 70 to 76,000 crore rupees within this sector will not only let India to come up on these lines, because India is having a great image and contribution in terms of IT sector to the world, and world believes in information technology quality produced in India and produced by Indians. In this way, the skills required, the designing required, the expertise required, and the experience required, along with the funding required, this entire ecosystem will create a great scope for India to fill in that potential gap created by this COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, it will generate massive direct and indirect employment schemes, employment scopes for the people who are just finishing graduates, because India is a country which produces world's highest number of engineers every year. So for that consumption or for that involvement of those newly graduated engineers will find a new scope or new target, and new courses will also be developed. So within this manner, we can say that India's education system and India's skilling system and India's production system is getting a new sector that will provide a vibrant opportunities and economies of scale and the scope to excel in. So this is about this chip to startup design scheme, the context we have spoken about, and how the C2S will be working, what is the quantum of money being plotted into this entire scenario, and how that government is trying to take this forward. So this is all about this scheme.